Of course, tough tariffs and tough talk, the relationship between Washington and Ankara on the ropes. But the bigger question is, how far is each side willing to go in this diplomatic duel? I asked freelance journalist Ahu Ozyurt if people in Turkey blame the increased tariffs as the main cause of the country's economic turmoil.
Well, it looks like the president wants to make his case that way, but the economic troubles, as you just mentioned, has been the talk of the town for a couple of months. Everyone was waiting for the balloon to burst somehow, and the Pastor Brunson issue that became a flashpoint between the United States and Turkey became the tipping of the iceberg. Sanctions are not so much a conversation issue at this point in Turkey, but yes, I found is everyone sort of the love and hate object in Turkey, particularly in Istanbul. People don't know if they can boycott most of these products. But yes, the main enemy seems to be American products, but mainly the political tensions are brewing more than the economic scene. There's growing economic trouble in Turkey. There's very little conversation on that. People do understand it, but they don't want to talk about it.
Turkey is a NATO ally, one of the United States' key partners in the fight against terrorism, and also home to the Incirlik Air Base. How will this mess, this feud, impact this very important relationship?
Well, Incirlik is always the sort of the nuclear issue when it comes to tensions between the United States and Turkey. It's almost the last point that should be brought to the table, but it's always the first talking point and first the headline point. When you look at the media, when you talk to the people on the streets, it's easy to say we should shut down Incirlik, let the Americans go, but it's a NATO base as well, so it's a very critical issue. We don't know if the public, when you ask to the general people, normal people, taxi drivers, merchants, they wouldn't be so happy about leaving NATO at this point. People think that this is a political tension between Trump administration and Ankara, and it will eventually be solved. But it's always good to have the Incirlik option on the table as a negotiating point.
And is there a sense there that Turkey is shifting closer to countries like Russia, like Iran, and like China because of this rift?
Well, this has been talked about for a couple of years now, and there's been a growing sentiment of anti-Americanism in Turkish public since the beginning of the Iraqi war, actually. But if you look at Pew researches, it's been growing steadily. The general public thinks it's a better option if Turkey does more business with China, Iran, and Russia, and maybe improves ties with the European Union rather than being tied to the NATO alliance and being tied so closely to the United States. It's now everyone's topic, and it's one of the bigger options on the table.
And Ahu, with so much at stake between these two countries, what is going to happen if they can't reach some kind of compromise on the release of this American pastor, Andrew Brunson?
There's been some discussion yesterday between the White House and the Turkish ambassador, Mr. Serdar Kılıç, about a probable release of Andrew Brunson. It's too early to call at this point, but it seems like both leaders are going to raise the tensions to its highest point. Then we may see a breakthrough. Over the weekend, we're going to start this long holiday, and that may be a critical turning point in terms of the release of Andrew Brunson if there is a legal negotiation on the table.